And you found us. Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Safely in my California closet. I guess isn't exactly the brand you might be thinking of, but I am in a closet. And here's an image of that's San Guillermo the Hermit. And I don't know about you, but I've been mesmerized by all the fire coverage. Man, they've got a lot of good live reporters out there in LA. Thank goodness for Roku, so I can watch wherever I am, like 7 hours away from LA. I can watch the coverage, and you see that the locals do it well. They know where all these spots are. They know the landmarks. They know what's burning. They're there, and the poor national guys, gals. Actually, there's a lot of good national reporters, but they can't cover it for like the locals. Natasha Chen did a good job, but boy, she had a harrowing scene trying to get out. Natasha Chen from CNN, great reporter, and described how they narrowly escaped getting out. And you can't breathe that stuff. You can't be in the fire zone for that long. So I was just watching. I was hooked from about mid-afternoon. Fire started yesterday at around 10, 11 o'clock. And I was just, I literally was depressed. I mean, I just come back, right? Experiencing a funeral. Then Carter's funeral began, and it began more in earnest as the body went from Georgia to Washington, D.C., and then to the Capitol yesterday. So I was just getting PTSD from the funeral that began for me, coincided with Carter's, like over the weekend, funeral of my, I call him cousin, but Filipino style. He called me uncle. My cousin Christopher. So I was already feeling down. And then I got hooked on the coverage, and the fire coverage. Like I said, the locals did a heck of a job covering it. No one knows how it started. Throughout the day and night, and now this morning, 24 hours later, 0% contained. Last night, of course, it was still, after 12 hours, 0% contained. And the fire grew from 2 fires to 3 fires, and now today there's 4 fires down there in Los Angeles, and it covers almost every part of what you conceive to be LA. A rural section, later on the Silmar fire, which is not really, I mean, it's an exurb or rhubarb of LA. And then Altadena, the fire there, it's really more Pasadena, the foothills. Pacific Palisades, which is part of LA. It's not an exurb. It's not its own city. It's part of LA City. And close to Santa Monica, right? It's like the next town down, and they evacuated thousands from Santa Monica. Yes. And then I'll tell you this. I'm supposed to be kind of a San Francisco chauvinist, but this is the power of these natural disasters. They bring us together. They make us feel like one. We're rooting for them. We're rooting for each other. And I know, as a San Franciscan at heart, right? The new mayor of San Francisco was inaugurated today. Like, having a tech bro like Daniel Lurie is going to make a difference. It might. Then you're saying, well, the African-American female who didn't do as good a job, this white guy is going to do better, and that's good for the city. Can't say that. But I just know that was the big news in San Francisco. Got the new mayor, but everything is overshadowed by the LA fire. And our hearts are with LA. Our thoughts are with LA. I've got friends there. who I was wondering, are they going to do their podcast today? No, they didn't, because there's other things. And I've got friends in Pacific Palisades, but friends in Santa Monica, and my thoughts are with you. I didn't contact him. I mean, how can I? I'm 6 hours away, and I'd only get in the way. If anyone asks, I said, look, this is what we're doing up north. We're sending our water down there, because that's a big issue. Big issue is the infrastructure. The big issue is, did they have the water they needed? What was wrong with the water pressure? Every time we saw a news crew at a scene, and it was like a live fire. It was like this was made for TV news. And one of the things that got me, I mean, I was never good at live shots, because they always send me after the fact. And I'd have to throw to the video that was taken 6 hours ago, and I'd stand in front of the rubble or whatever. But I never did. I didn't do many live shots where there was a reason to go live. It's because everything's burning. But yesterday was made for local news, and they did a good job. I was watching KCAL. I was watching Fox 11, KTTV, I think are the call letters. Channel 11 down there via Roku. KABC was good. I mean, they were all good. But KNBC, they were all good. But I happened to catch Channel 11 when they were, or actually, I mean, Rick Caruso was out there, and he was talking about, hey, these hoses, what happened to the water? People were complaining about infrastructure. And Caruso, who ran for mayor, a business guy, who ran and lost for mayor, he lost to Karen Bass. He said, where's the mayor? Shouldn't the mayor be here? She was out of the country flying back. But, people are starting to finger point, saying, and which is counterproductive, because this is a time when we should all be together. And I'm saying this as a San Franciscan who is looking on LA. Look, I only hate the Dodgers. I don't hate LA. I don't hate Angelinos. I hate the Dodgers because they beat up on the Giants. But aside from that, I actually love LA. And my heart goes out to all of those people. And this is the thing about, like I said, about natural disasters. They bring us together, and we root for each other, and I tell my friends, I say, what are you going to do about the fires? And well, I live up north. I live in Northern California. We're sending our water. We're sending our water down to LA. Godspeed. I hope it helps, because the last I checked, even after more than 24 hours, 0% containment. And I don't know, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get any kind of containment? You got the firefighters who are tapped out. They need reinforcements. The National Guard is being called in. You've got the dry vegetation, right? Because there's been 0.02% or 0.02 inches of rain in this wintertime. This is when it's supposed to rain in LA, right? No rain. So you get the dry vegetation. You got those Santa Ana winds, and every year the Santa Ana winds are an issue. Every year the Santa Ana winds come up, and in previous fires, it's usually brush fires out in the exurb, rhubarb areas where it's remote and they burn and no one's hurt. Now it's in these densely populated areas like Pacific Palisades. I never go. I have friends there, but I never go there. I mean, if I see them, I'll meet them in Santa Monica, or I meet them in LA proper. But just like Malibu, Pacific Palisades butts up to Malibu. I don't go out to Malibu unless I have something to do with Pepperdine but that's a drive. It's also where the extremely wealthy, well, it's a mix, right? If you live up in the hills, you've got a mansion. If you're down in the flats, you've got a regular type of house. But it's in California, so it's all worth $1 million plus. And to see the embers go and jump from house to house as the flames were whipped by the wind, the Santa Ana winds. Oh, it was heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. And as I said, empathetic because, I actually like LA very much. When I was there last year at this time, they had floods. And I was caught in like some of the strangest weather, mostly rain. So it was like wet and wild last year around this time. This year, it's fire. Thousands of people evacuated. Thousands. And right now that we know of, about 2 people dead. Only 2. I hope that number stays low, but I know that's only a function of the fact that we don't know. At this point, 2 people, but multiple burn victims or victims of multiple burns in hospitals. I hope that is limited because this is a disaster of historic proportions. And like I said, this is the sort of thing that brings us together. This is the sort of thing that makes us say, yeah, we have to work hard and rebuild. And if you're not an Angelino, well, you're a Californian and you're a U.S. citizen, or you live in these United States. And this is what we do when this thing happens. We come together. A great coincidence, a lot of the places that were burned down in Pacific Palisades, besides some, very elegant, rich mansions, mobile home parks. So there was a kind of a trickle down, the embers flying as it's whipped up by the winds, the Santa Ana winds. One reporter was live, and she happened to be next to an American flag that was still on a pole flying in Pacific Palisades. And it was a perfect kind of poetic moment. The flag was still there, tattered, smoked. Smoked remnants, buffeted by the winds, still flying, still there. A sign of the resistance that we have as Americans, as people of this country, when we are faced with this kind of adversity. We bounce back. We get up. That's what we do as Americans. The flag was still there. We're still united. We're still the United States. That's really, and this is with 0% containment. We're still fighting. They're still fighting it down there. 0% contained. It was a kind of poetic moment. And I was like glued, just going from channel to channel, watching like who's where, what are they showing? Houses on fire, jumping streets, going from house to house, people coming back. One thing that was distressing, seeing people trying to escape in cars and then seeing them abandon their cars because they couldn't stay there. And then to see bulldozers come in and move the cars, destroying the cars. So this is going to be, if you still had fire insurance, because a lot of insurers canceled on people with homes there in California, down there in LA. It's going to be, it's going to be an insurance hassle home-wise, but also car-wise. Cars were on fire. Cars were destroyed. And if there were thousands who were evacuating, you had to wonder, well, where did they go? Only later I saw, well, there are some addresses of evacuation centers. The Rose Bowl was open for people. Essentially, people were camping. And this is a kind of trickle down, right? That you got these fires in all these far-flung places around LA. The wind whips it up. If the embers don't get you, then the particulate matter will. And I know this just from reading environmental impact studies in my days covering city council meetings. PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5. That's the thing that, your masks are supposed to help protect you from. Of course, as the reporters would say, hey, look, I'm wearing a mask, but, it's very uncomfortable here. I can smell not just the burning building materials, but all the chemicals, the gas that's fueling, the fires, the wind whipping it around. The embers are coming up in my eyes. That's why I'm wearing these goggles. There's soot on my hand. Oh, man. It took me back to my days when I was covering floods. I covered floods. I missed out on earthquakes, even though I was working in San Francisco. But when I moved out to the East Coast, I covered snowfall. Snowfall's fairly easy. You can't see worth a darn. And you can't drive, and it's cold, you're freezing, but I think I'd rather cover like a 5-foot snow dump than a fire, for sure. And also versus a hurricane or a tornado into a flood. And this is the news. The news are these natural disasters. They don't know what caused this fire. They don't. Not yet. I mean, I don't know if it's arson. Was it someone's cigarette? How would they? There are at least right now. There are at least 4 fires between the one in Pasadena, Altadena, the Eaton fire they call it, the Pacific Palisades fire. They've got one in Silmar, and there's a 4th one that came up around La Cañada. I mean, it's sad, but we're pulling together. And as I said, as a Northern California, I'm glad to send our water down there. I know that's a big water politics in California. Donald Trump got into this, trying to blame Gavin Newsom. It's not all Gavin Newsom's fault, but he says, oh, they're the whole water thing is about the protection of he called them smelts, the little smelts. Well, smelt. It's a fish. I don't know if it's just for the protection of the smelt. I think it's also for the protection of water rights. Whose water, who does this water belong to? Which sector? Are you going to take it from? I'd gladly give my water to help fight that fire right now. Right now, I don't think anyone would begrudge the Angelenos. But we need some better planning. We need some better infrastructure, and we need planning because California has not been drought proof. We're still on a watering rationing where I live, and I live 7 hours away. You can only water like once a week right now. Maybe twice. I think twice because they figured wintertime, and it's all based on rainfall totals. So we're twice, but when it's summertime, you're down to once a week. And just to give you an indication, I know people on the East Coast are freezing. With the temperatures down in the 20s and below. 62 degrees where I am right now. It's in the 70s in LA. And the winds, that's the thing that makes it treacherous because you got the winds, you got the vegetation. All right. I know it's just watching the fires should serve as a massive wake-up call, because what is the word that everyone seems to gravitate to? The word that, or the adjective that describes what we're going through. The one word that I can think of that I must have heard, if I had a nickel for every time I heard it on the television news, I'd be able to pay for a Starbucks coffee. But the term is apocalyptic. This is an apocalyptic vision of LA. Oh, I didn't. I gotta change this. I realize I didn't change this. It should say this is show 820. LA Apocalyptic. And I guess I should spell it right, huh? So I think the wake-up call is, if you don't realize by now that climate change is a real thing, if you don't realize, because everything we've seen in terms of natural disaster, just within the last 5 months, be it hurricanes, be it floods, tornadoes, it's all weather related, right? And this is weather related. You say, well, it's a fire, it's a kind of man-made. No, because it's the Santa Ana winds, which is climate issue. It's the heat, which aids in the dryness of the vegetation, and the near drought. I think it is a drought condition. I mean, they got 0.02% or inches of rain in LA, the beginning of winter. It's some of the lowest. So you take all that, and climate. What are we going to do about it? You know, drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill. And then you talk about the trickle down of the fires from the hills, or the fires from Pacific Palisades, and the spreading of that particulate matter 2.5. People are breathing it in. This is toxic. People everywhere are affected by this. You know, the air quality had as much to do with closing of schools as anything else. Not because the fires were going to burn down their schools, although there were some schools that were burned down. But the air quality is enough to, like, keep you home. You can't escape this. You can still smell the fire. You can still be impacted by the fire. And, you know, particulate matter 2.5 means it's so small, these particulate matters. They get into the lungs and into the bloodstream, and then there comes the inflammation and the illness. And, I mean, it's enough without fires, right, frankly. PM 2.5. I mean, if you're in a house by a freeway, and there's lots of freeways in LA, and you happen to be, you know, by a freeway, they've done studies showing if you live by a heavily traveled area like a freeway, that particulate matter has to go somewhere, and it's going to affect you. So under the best conditions, PM 2.5 and, you know, all that pollution is going to have an effect. You add the fire with the PM 2.5 as part of the PM 2.5, and, you know, what's our responsibility as a society to try to curb that? Drill, baby, drill. Is that the answer? So, you know, Donald Trump is getting into this debate because he blames the water policies of Gavin Newsom in California, and the smelt, protecting the smelt so the water doesn't get to Southern California. That's why there's no water in the fire hoses. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. The fact is, there was so much demand for the water that it was easily depleted. But according to some reports, that was replenished soon after. Now, that may have contributed to the water pressure. That may have the prioritization of who got water may have, may have played a part on whether or not firefighters, would turn to their hose and like nothing came out. But this is something that has to be dealt with as part of policy, infrastructure policy. It's where government comes in. And so Rick Caruso, the LA businessman who ran and lost for mayor, who got on all the television shows last night, I caught him on at least one. He started talking about the water pressure and hoses with no water. And then that spread to other places. Elon Musk then tweeted, sent it out on social media. And then Trump picked it up and started talking about it, about California's water problem. This is how this game of telephone, it's gossip is what it is. But the reporters, didn't challenge Caruso enough on that. It went out. Who knows if what he's saying is, there's probably some truth, but it's not the whole truth. The fact is, if there was some problem with the water pressure, it wasn't totally California water policy, but just the demand at that particular time when all these fires are burning. At some point, though, you're going to have to look at the water pressure or look at the water policy to say, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage the situation going forward? But this is the wake-up call about climate change. How do we control the particulate matter? How do we control, pollution? How do we control, the carbon emissions in the air? And how do we fairly divvy up the water that we don't have? Right? I mean, I guess we were rationed in terms of, where I am in the middle of the state, when we could water, when we could not. So, but they weren't. I mean, it takes something like this to wake people up and say, "Oh, we got to pay attention. Water policy is real. Climate change is real." Except our leaders are massively huge climate deniers, and I'm talking specifically about the next president of the United States. I mean, this is where you get this pre-vision of what things might look like in an apocalyptic world. You can bring up Mad Max if you want, but this is a glimpse of that, and I hope it changes some people's minds about how to live right for the future that's fair for everyone. Because the fires and the toxicity and the impact, it wasn't just the people who were immediately impacted, lost a home, lost a car, but because it's the wind that's spreading it, distributing it throughout LA. If you're in LA, you felt it. You know the impact of this fire. So there's no escaping it, except you should always heed evacuation warnings, right? I mean, I don't know if people did. My friends at Ethnic Media Services put out a report, just a list, saying what to do. Prepare a go bag. Did you have a go bag ready? In the event your family needs to evacuate, have essential items ready to go. This should include important documents, birth certificate, insurance policies, passports, etc. I guess if you name those three, you got the three most important things to identify you. But there's probably other things. Bring your credit cards, bring cash, right? Prescription medications, protective gear, meaning masks, sturdy shoes, maybe goggles if you have them, a backup battery because you're going to need an energy source, a way to charge your battery or your phone. I mean, the backup battery would charge your phone, but maybe, you get a plug, a fast charging USB-C plug. Definitely bring cash. What do you grab? I mean, I saw horses being let loose because people didn't know what to do with their horses up in near the Eaton fire. I mean, they were walking with some, but if you had 9 horses and can save 3, you're letting go 6 and hoping that some people would find them later. Smaller animals, cats, dogs, you're taking them, right? So you got your cat, your dog, you bring your pet supplies and your companions with you. You got to prepare in a go bag some food and water so you have, at least something that doesn't require refrigeration. Maybe some peanut butter. Maybe some, I know, I love those high fiber tortillas, right? I'm not on a keto diet, but those high fiber tortillas, you bring a bunch of them and some peanut butter, you're good. No cooking needed. Bring some bars, protein bars or whatever. Those tortillas, they're loaded with fiber. Oh, might have to go to the bathroom. Bring some toilet paper and some water. Bring a thermos, bring a Stanley cup, bring some bottled water. I mean, that's in your go bag, I didn't see many people with packs. I mean, the other thing, you might want to grab some sentimental things. Pictures. I know, I just saw one clip of a guy who went back to a fire. He left, went back to the fire, tried to grab things. The smoke was too much. You need your mask if you're going to go through things. But at that point, bring cash if you have it. Do people still carry cash? I mean, maybe people hide stuff under their bed. But you grab pictures. Maybe this is why you got to put some things on the iCloud to do. Take pictures of valuable photos that aren't digitized and put them on the cloud. And that way you might lose the original item, but you'll have the picture of your mom or your dad or your kids. Bring your devices, right? I guess you bring a computer, an iPad. Bring your phone, right? I mean, some places were not within. They couldn't. They weren't in reach. But then, so this is from the Ethnic Media Services folks. Prepare a go bag. Important documents. Maybe 1 or 2 things that you hung on to, if you remember them. Stick it in a bag, ready to go. And then I think the number 1 thing that is in this Ethnic Media Services release, it says, don't wait, evacuate. Plan multiple evacuation routes ahead of time. Listen and watch for evacuation warnings and orders. An evacuation warning means get ready to leave or leave if you need extra time. elderly people with disabilities, or people with disabilities, young children, large animals. And, one of the first things I saw last night, they were standing in that 7-Eleven in Altadena, and there were people being taken out of their living situation in gurneys and their beds and put out into the parking lot, waiting to be taken somewhere else. I don't know where they took them to, but it was a senior living type place. You saw the Filipino nurses gathering them, but it was sad because, yeah, remember the Titanic, the Edwardian principles, women and children first, but there were some men, so the elderly were out there. That's got to be part of your plan. But the key thing about evacuation orders, when you hear them, it means leave immediately. There's no messing around. There's no messing around. And find people that that you can say, hey, you're part of my plan. We're meeting up at your house. You got to have something like that. So if you don't get something like that, get it ready so that it could be a fire. Look, the things that happen down there in LA, if you're in Northern California, like I am, think about Oakland, the Oakland fire. If you're in the Central Coast, so think about Santa Barbara. Fires in Santa Barbara off 101 not too long ago, a few years back. If you're further up Northern California, Santa Rosa, the Santa Rosa fire. I mean, and it wasn't in a remote place in Santa Rosa. It was like some of the most expensive suburban homes in Santa Rosa went up in flames. Same thing. Embers went from house to house. They couldn't contain it. In the end, you're not hosing down the fire. You're hosing down a perfectly fine house, trying to keep it wet so the embers don't take hold and a new fire or a fire in that house ensues. So we have a lot to learn about this. And it's going to cost billions of dollars. So the feds are going to be important here. Joe Biden was in LA because his granddaughter was having a baby. It's sort of coincidence. And people thought maybe they'd get some answers. Well, they got some answers. They were going to send the National Guard to help out, but I don't know what it's going to take. Fire. I know watching it, I kept saying, oh, what do I like? What's the worst kind of natural disaster? Would you rather be in an earthquake? Earthquake is just one shake, but if it's a good shake, everything, there's like flame here and gas leak here, and you don't know what you're going to find. Earthquake could be treacherous, but it's quick. If it happens, you'll know where the trouble spots are, and it's limited to that unless there are aftershocks. So I don't know. Earthquake, I don't know if I prefer that. With the Loma Prieta fire or Loma Prieta earthquake, there was structures, right? Roadway that collapsed onto each other. People died there that way. So I don't know if I'd want an earthquake. A flood? Well, you can go to higher ground, get a little wet, but I know people who've lived through floods. It's no fun. You're wet, it's dreary, it's cold. You can climb up to like the second floor, but how do you get down? All your stuff is just destroyed. Water damage. Fire, I think, is treacherous. Far more treacherous. I mean, you can get wet. You won't get burned. It may not get you in the same way. But if you're burned, like, there are people with multiple burns in the hospital. They don't have a final tally. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be a while before they have any kind of tally, really. They know they have multiple victims or victims of multiple burns, and they know they have at least 2 people who have died in LA, but it's it's just sad. It's sad. And now this is going to have, going forward, what happens? I guess LA's got to rebuild, at least Pacific Palisades. And it's such a nice area. Like I said, I got some friends there, and never been to their houses, but it's a pricey, expensive community, a little enclave near the ocean. But so there's some powerful people who are impacted. I'm sure we will find out. We will learn. And they will have the wherewithal to help themselves. I'm sure of that. Inconvenienced, but they will rebuild. I'm sure of that. But everyone else is affected too, right? You got to think about how the particulate matter, and going forward, there's going to have to be some kind of better sense of a policy that will protect us all from these sort of things. And we know the Santa Ana winds come up every year. Every year it happens. All right, so we covered what to bring, how to respond, and to be compassionate, to be helpful. It's so touching to see people with water buckets coming, to help out neighbors. Although there have been reports of looting, not a lot, but I heard the sheriff talk about looters being arrested. I mean, this is where you find out what kind of country you have. But look at the kind of leader we have, or that we're about to have. Trying to point fingers and blame Gavin Newsom. It's not Gavin Newsom's fault. Not Joe Biden's fault. But this is what someone like Donald Trump does. I mean, it's funny that in every news source that I consulted, fire dominated the news. It wasn't the only news story. I mean, you had Jimmy Carter laying in state. You had, now this is an important story that you did hear about. Axios wrote about it. It was their number one big thing. Even though the fires were major, they wrote about how America and the world will get and consume information in the years ahead. That's important because we're seeing how some things are changing. We see, number one, trust in traditional media vanishing. I mean, I didn't turn to the New York Times for a story on the LA fires, but I went to Roku, technology aided, to go to the LA stations and find out what's happening down there. Axios says we are people who are now getting information from dozens of ecosystems, not just one, and not just one silo. But it's not just one silo, but not just one mainstream. There's all, like, the sources are multiple, and they're usually now social platforms. We are literally shouting from the rooftops. We're literally gossiping our news out through the social media platforms. Talk about X, Facebook, Instagram, and And I think it becomes an issue when Facebook, Meta, decided yesterday it's no longer going to fact check anything. I mean, a few years ago, Twitter, before it was X, Facebook, Instagram, they have teams monitoring news and information. And, pulling down posts that, well, really it was more censorship, I thought. But if you're a news organization, because they're always evolving their policy over the last couple of years. Now they said, look, we're not about policing news organizations or people. We're just a platform. They're taking the easy way out because the easy way is what Donald Trump wants. And this means you're likely to get a lot of misinformation. Unless you're dealing with people who have some allegiance to journalism. Like myself. I mean, I give a lot of opinion. It's reported opinion, or it's based on fact. But I'll let you know what's opinion and what's fact. There are others who use all these social media and you won't know. And that's the new world of media. People distrust the traditional, they'll go with the gossip. And social media folks like Facebook, Meta, throw their hands up in the air and say, look, we're not going to have fact-checking teams. And they can get away with it because most people don't turn to the New York Times or the Washington Post or traditional media where journalism is still respected. They just say, what do you hear? I mean, it really is hearsay, right? It's gossip. And that's the way President Trump wants it, likes it, and he's going to be a huge beneficiary of this. Of course, he owns Truth Social. I mean, if you look at all the companies, Elon Musk has 211 million followers on X. Zuckerberg, 118 million on Facebook, 15 million on Instagram. Even Trump and Truth Social has 8.5 million. They have bypassed the traditional media sources. And now people say, I'll just get it directly from these people. And I guess I'm just going to have to trust them. Yeah, you're going to have to trust them. Because you don't know. And Meta is saying, hey, we're going to let people police themselves. And people say, this is true, this is not true. We'll let the trolls have their day. Which means the greater responsibility is going to be on the people to decide what is what. Will you be able to decide that? Are you going to have time? Or are you just going to say, I'll just, whatever it says on Facebook? It's going to make us, by necessity, be more suspicious. Or we just throw up our hands and say, yeah, I saw it in Facebook. I know I can only believe it 60% of the time, but I'm going to choose to believe it because I'm lazy. And that's what's going to happen. And then the traditional media, because it's being bought up by like Bezos, who bought the Post, he says, we want to make the publication for, quote, all of America, with an emphasis on social media, not, the reputation of traditional media. So this is the new media world coinciding with the fire. I mean, who did I turn to? I turned to not the newspapers because they're I didn't even turn to the LA Times. And the LA Times is one of those bended knee toward Trump kind of outlets now. Generally I like the Times. I subscribe to the Times, LA Times, New York Times, Washington Post. I subscribe to all of them because I want to hear from them. Can I trust them? I don't know. So Axios had the fires as the fourth story. And this is something where 30,000 people evacuated. 3,000 acres burned. And I think in the coming days, we'll see which celebrities were impacted. And that will be more of a story than, so-and-so's house? That'll be more a story than, what are we going to do to try to stop these things from happening again? So all these things are happening. We got Jimmy Carter lying in state. Catch my my column on theinquirer.net. I wrote about my cousin Christopher. Because the coincidence of Christopher's funeral and the start of Carter's funeral, I think has put me in a kind of a somber mood in general. But it's sort of, I think, where we should be on. I mean, it's a new year, everyone's happy, but we got to prepare for some change. There are going to be some big changes this month. January 20th. Big change. And this week we already certified a vote. We also, come Friday, looks like we're going to get a report about Donald Trump release from the Justice Department, or part of that report. And looks like we're going to have a sentencing of Donald J. Trump. He's going to be sentenced like a president, which makes me mad. Because it does prove that one man is above the law. He's only president-elect. But the sentencing is one where he's going to be sentenced where there's no punishment. So it's a sentence in name only. But as long as Trump is president, he gets away with things. So that's going to happen Friday. So a lot yet to come. And then there's all that stuff about Greenland and the Panama Canal and Canada, and Trump has been using it as his own little firestorm to distract us from real things that are happening, like the fact that 2025, January 20th, his first day, he'll probably pardon all these January 6th insurrectionists. Maybe even the one who was sentenced today to, there was one who was sentenced today to 14 months in prison. Nathaniel Tuck, other Proud Boys. Just today, Wednesday. And the Proud Boy founder, Terrio, he's in there for 22 years. He wants a pardon. Enrique Terrio, the former top leader of the Proud Boys, serving a 22-year prison sentence, the longest of any Capitol riot case. He wants it. He wants a pardon. He's expecting it. I don't know. Meantime, Donald Trump's spreading lies about January 6th. I mean, the whole thing about Ashley Babbitt at that press conference, saying, "Oh, Ashley Babbitt, she was peaceful in the no, she climbed into that broken window and she trespassed by trying to make her into a martyr." This is the thing about Trump. The lies continue, and because he's the president of the United States, we want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but there's too much doubt. There are too many lies. And I think that's a problem when the president talks about Greenland. Oh, we're going to take over Greenland, take over the Panama Canal, Canada, 51st state. This is great for someone like me, a talk show host, to say. But he's the president of the United States, not a talk host. You can ignore me. You can't ignore the president of the United States. You got to take it seriously. And when you take that seriously, it takes away focus from things that are really important. So this is where we find ourselves. The first week of 2025. Chaotic. The news cycles are minute to minute. And it makes you want to say, "Stop the world. I want to get off." Remember that? I mean, I think it forces a lot of people just to sort of sit back and try to get a grip. Maybe just to breathe. Maybe just to, do nothing and to think. And then take action. Because it is a strange January. Last January was strange too. Like I said, in LA, there was these massive rains and floods. Remember that? But usually self-contained. I mean, there was damage, but fire is the living hell, right? So, all right, well, we've rambled on. LA News. Man, hats off to LA News. I think they did an excellent job covering it. They still are covering it, and the fires. Not even. I don't think it's 1% contained. I don't think anyone can say there's any kind of containment. This is going to go on. It's sad, but hopefully it will bring us together, because that's what we need. We don't need to snark. Oh, look at those Angelinos. Look at. Don't need to point finger, point blame. Need to come together. Like I said, the most amazing live shot I saw was just the coincidence of there was a flag at a mobile home park, and the reporter was poetic enough to say, "Here we are. The flag's still there. A reminder that we will survive. We will make do. It'll take a while, but we will go on, and hopefully make the policy we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again, or if it does, we're better prepared." All about preparedness, right? All right, let's swish out. Read me on Inquirer.net, INQUIRER.net, Philippine Inquirer. Also on YouTube, the YouTube channel, Emil Amok 1. Substack, a little behind there, but you can see my columns on Inquirer.net. Real sobering week so far, and it's not over. This is only hump day, right? We're only halfway through. I think I'm gonna go and do comedy tonight. I need it. I'll be at the Deaf Puppy tonight. Let's see. Let's see if I can get some laughs. Now, Meta, M-E-T-A, said, no fact checking. I end with metta, M-E-T-T-A, a little metta meditation, which is the loving kindness meditation. Because we can't remember, we're part of this happy family, struggling, helping each other. Yeah, I'm a San Franciscan who gladly says I love LA. I know San Franciscans are supposed to be at odds with Angelinos, but no, we like LA. I like LA. And I'm glad that I was able to access LA TV because they did a hell of a job covering the fires. Because there you had it. I mean, all you had to do is just point the camera at that. My cameraman, please shoot that fire. There it is. It was great. Some great coverage. It's a reminder that that's what local news is about. That's what live television is about. It's about, hey, we're in the middle of this flame. And then one reporter added, oh, how it smelled. Oh, it's terrible. I can't breathe. Started coughing. Another reporter, presence of mind, to point to, oh, there's that image. There's the American flag. That was a good image. Brought us together. As we should be in moments like this. All right. So we end with this loving kindness meditation because we send out the love and it comes back twofold. And so as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal